Forget all the noise we're going to hear when the health care ruling goes down Thursday. Why not a peep over something that continued to go down big time today? I'm talking about gas prices tumbling, and not a single politician rumbling. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and I want to know, where's the outrage? Because obviously the oil price fix is in, right? Prices are collapsing, so it must be those damn greedy speculators doing the fixing, right? So where are the calls for probes and commissions? Where's Chuck Schumer demanding investigations into evil speculators, no doubt rigging the markets? Why isn't the president bemoaning profiteers who might very well be shorting gas prices and forcing them down? Or does he only do so when those prices go up? Could it be that there's only an evil cabal when prices go up and not when they go down? Then I want you to stop yourself and ask yourself, if you're rigging the markets up or down, it should be the same thing, right? It's bad, right? It's just as wrong forcing prices down as when you force them up, right? Unless these price swings have nothing to do with speculators and more to do with something not nearly so sinister: supply and demand. Maybe this isn't about speculators controlling the markets as much as gunning the direction up or down in the markets. No more, no less. And besides, even if these greedy guys could control the markets, they seem to make money up or down. Making money betting oil prices rise, making money betting oil prices fall, going long, going short. Curious. Maybe that's the long and short of what's really going on here. That's why politicians' silence is so deafening. Back when gas prices were rocketing, well, they couldn't shut up. Maybe we should remember this moment now that they're going down, because I can only assume they think the markets are rigged when prices aren't going the right way, and say not a peep when they go the other way. Either way, I say no way. And so does my buddy Swiss America Chairman Craig Smith. Craig, the silence is deafening.
You know, Neil, it's almost comical. It's ironic when you think about it. Who could forget Maxine Waters in 2008 when she was saying for her, she wants to socialize the oil industry. We're going to go in. We're going to take it over. We're going to run it for you, show you how it's done. And you're right, Neil. Where's the outrage today? And you know the answer as well as I do, my friend. It's a supply and demand issue. It's economics 101. You've tried to teach this to your dear friend Bill O'Reilly. You had to set Chris Van Hollen straight on your program, on Your World. When will we get it through our thick heads that all these investigations, all these studies, all these hearings have never come up with one shred of evidence that speculators or the big bad oil guys cause prices to go up or prices to go down? It's simple supply and demand. And when will they get it through the thick skulls?
Well,
if they took...
But, Craig, I think you're right. I think more to my maybe cynical point here, I think they do know that. And I think they do know that this is supply and demand. And I think it makes great theater and great pizzazz and great headlines when you go after when the prices rise. But you're just silent as a church mouse when they come down. Because if you're going to be consistent on this issue of rigged markets, let's say these guys might be shorting the price of oil and gas right now, betting prices go down. That would presumably be just as sinister, but that gets a pass, right?
Yeah, oh, sure, because, of course, that's good for their political futures. I mean, think about this. We saw the same thing in the housing issue. I mean, let's be real honest about this. Did anybody talk about the bad loans being made or all the credit that was flowing? No, just as long as your house went up every year.
Absolutely.
The politicians were fine with this. Now, the minute that the house prices started to drop, all you know what broke loose, Neil, and it was the bad, evil bankers. The reality is, and this is primarily on the Democratic side, I might say, and I hate to be so partisan about it, they're always looking for a boogeyman. They're always looking for a bad guy. And the reality is, if these politicians took as much time to put together solid legislation, which we haven't had for 40 years in this nation for an energy plan, Neil, as much time in that as they do grandstanding these issues, we wouldn't have a problem with energy. Because you know as well as I do, Neil, right under our feet, there's enough reserve to take care of this country to give us low-cost, reliable supplies of energy for decades to come. It's about time these rascals got off their grandstands
right about
and
that.
got
and
to
by
work.
the way, there's enough natural gas underneath the ground, to say nothing of the hot air above the ground in the Capitol, to keep us going for centuries. But one thing, Craig, I found fascinating. I'm glad you mentioned it, because it reminded me of another sin, and that is, piling on the banks. I know I'm going to seem like I'm trying to be a patron saint of the banks. I'm not. But I do remember quite vividly how it was sort of like a birthright that everyone had to get a mortgage, and that
Sure.
the banks were being pushed. You better lend it to everyone and anyone. And if you don't, there's hell to pay. So they lent to everybody and anyone. The whole house of cards came tumbling down, and they told them right after the meltdown, never do that again. And now they're penalizing them for being strict about lending. So you can't win. But I guess, are there any lessons, or as a guy who's quoted a lot in the financial and general press, that people should remember here and take away from this latest gas incident?
You bet. Life is not always fair. Life has risks. Sometimes markets go up and sometimes markets go down, Neil. And if we think that politicians can smooth that process out, we're really dreaming. If you want to see, look, all you have to do is go back to Nixon and Carter, wage and price controls. You let the government get in and start fixing markets by limiting supplies, by limiting price, and you're going to have a real mess on your hands. There's a global market for oil today. It's a supply and demand issue. Look, the positive in all this, Neil, is 2002, when prices started creeping up from the lows in 98. Billions were spent on exploration. What has that done, Neil? All kinds of new discoveries. We've got all kinds of new supplies. That's bringing the price down. I would argue you've got a base now between $80 and $90 for oil for a long time to come if the politicians don't mess it up. But as you know, my favorite line, Neil, they could screw up a one-piece puzzle, these rascals in Washington.
Well, I'm going to call a probe into all of this. But Craig Smith, always a pleasure. Well, what do you bet? Just bet the politicians will take a bow for